This is the complete disassembly and reassembly of the M1 Garand trigger housing. The first thing we're going to do is the safety is on right now and the hammer is back. We're going to take the safety off and ride the hammer forward. Always keep your fingers away from this area. Okay, after riding the hammer forward, the two pins that we're going to deal with, this is also with no tools. The only thing I'm going to use is this bullet, and I'm probably going to use it just once. This pin and the trigger pin all come out and enter from the right hand side. Alright, so don't try to put them in from the other way. Also, both pins only fit one way, and I'll show you how the heads look in a minute. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to push back on the sear and the trigger at the same time towards the front of the rifle. And what we're going to do is loosen the pin up a little bit so we can push it through. Okay? So I'm grabbing the sear with one finger and I'm grabbing the back of the trigger with the other finger. And I'm going to apply pressure to the front of the rifle. And I'm going to push the back side of this pin. You can see it's already unseated itself. When I flip it over, you can see how it's not seated well. I'm going to continue pushing forward on both the trigger and the sear, and I'm going to pull the pin out and gently, a lot of pressure is behind this, the hammer spring, gently let it go. When you let it go, the hammer plunger, spring, housing, and trigger should all fall out. That's 4 pieces. At this point, there should be no more pressure on anything. Push the hammer pin out. And if you look closely, the head on the right side is a little bit larger and it will not fit any other way. The trigger pin is the same. It has a head on it and a concave, almost recessed bevel to it. It can only go in one way. Now we can slide the hammer about halfway down, and you're going to pull back and up at the same time to clear the safety from this little hook area. Take the hammer out. The top of the safety can be pushed towards the camera, and I'll unseat the stud and the safety into the hole of the trigger housing. This stud into that hole. Now we can unlatch the trigger guard, slide it back about halfway. There's a little cut, little bevel here. I'm going to bring it to here where this pin on the opposite side, we're going to move the bottom of it to the left side of the rifle. Excuse me, to the right side of the rifle. And it will unhook. You can see the pin right there. When we put it together, it's going to go across like that. Now there's the ejector. The ejector comes out pretty easy if you know what you're doing. Get the bullet or the round and you push, and you heard it detach itself. That's a completely stripped M1 Garand housing. Now to reassemble. Putting the end block injector clip, and what I'm doing is, all I'm doing is just holding this corner down with my thumb. And I'm going to pull on this part, and it clicks in. A lot of people have a lot of trouble with this. It's actually very simple. Just hold down this part with your right thumb, and then push this down and away from the bottom towards here. There's a small lip right here that it'll catch on. That's the problem that most people have in getting them off and on. Later they modified these housings and made this area larger. I actually think it makes more of a problem. So with the end block ejector spring in place, the next thing we're going to do is the trigger guard. Again, from the right hand side, we've got to make that stud clear the bottom of the trigger housing and tilt until she stays in place. Slide it forward. Should line these holes up. Again, like I said, this hammer pin can only go in one way. The next step is to put the safety in. The safety will have a little bit of tension going down. Match the stud up to the hole. She's seated. Now we can place the hammer in. A little bit of a 45-degree angle and a little bit of a cant towards the camera. You also have to make sure that it clears that stud. This stud right there off the trigger guard, and roll it forward. Line your holes up. See how it sits flush? That's how you know she's in right. Same thing with the other side. I turn around, let the hammer take the gravity. I put together my plunger, my hammer spring housing, and I put it in. The cutout goes towards the safety. A lot of people try to do it this way and they'll screw their rifle up. Cut out towards the safety. This is one of the hardest parts, is now putting this rest of this together. This hook right here on the back side of the trigger is going to get hooked right here and just rests. And right where that trigger spring is and the sear goes in, right here, I'm going to keep my left thumb on there. Keep it in place. I'm pushing down, and that's it, lightly. With this hand, I'm going to move the sear towards the front of the rifle until I get it all the way seated to the right area. See how I'm pretty close? So you can see a little daylight down there. It's not there yet. I have to move my trigger a little bit. Now the holes are pretty well lined up. I put my trigger pin in. Now I have to move my trigger forward a little. Hear it click, touches the bottom of the trigger guard. Now I can do it again. I'm holding the back of the trigger and moving the sear, just like I did the disassembly, until it's centered. Now I push. Now it's flush. Check my work. Pull the hammer all the way back. Should catch. Safety should engage. Shouldn't fire. Take the safety off. Pull the trigger. I'm going to ride the hammer forward, but I'm going to hold the trigger to the rear. And I'm going to try to reseat the hammer. Should catch on the sear and hold. When I release, it'll do the trigger reset and will not fire. That is the complete assembly, disassembly of the M1 Garand trigger housing.